Jnana and Gaya, knowledge and the object of knowledge, matter and spirit. Purusha and Prakriti, material nature and the enjoyer of material nature. So there's the enjoyer word, because it's part of the chapter, but it's met with different ways of looking at the same question, 201, from chapter, the first half of chapter 2 of Bhagavad Gita, just to get an overview of what we're about to do. What we're about to do is discuss what's really enjoyment, anyways. In this material world, sukha and dukkha, because the world that we're in is a world of duality, and it's not completely this or completely that, it's ever-changing, ever in flux, and sometimes the configuration looks like this, and sometimes it looks like that. There's this English saying, you're not from America, but the English saying is, some like it hot, some like it cold, some like it in the pot 3 days old. You've heard that one as a kid, but those of you from India, you haven't heard that one. Goodness, passion, and ignorance. The 3 days old, that's the ignorance guy. Some like it in the pot 3 days old. But so there's modes of nature, and because of modes of nature, there's different ideas of what enjoyment is. The same thing, one man's food is another man's poison. That's something Prabhupada quoted often. Because what's good for you might be bad for another person, and vice versa. So there's modes of nature, and then there's this concept of being the enjoyer. But in the place of duality, I'm just painting a picture of where we are, and Bhagavad Gita telling us, helping us to understand where we are. It's a place of duality, and sometimes happiness, and sometimes distress. And so we're going to ask Mr. Frog, what's enjoyment anyways? And who's the enjoyer? So let's ask Krishna that question. And there's 2 verses from chapter 13 that is the topic for this evening. Some of you like Sanskrit. Karya karana kartritve hetu prakritir uchyate. So prakriti, material nature, is said to be the cause of causes and effects. Karya and karana. Karya and karana. Material nature is said to be the cause of material causes and effects. And the living entity, Purusha, Sukha Dukhanam, Bhoktritve, that's the enjoyer. The Bhokta person is the one that wants to be the enjoyer of material nature. Here's Prabhupada's translation. Nature is said to be the cause of all material causes and effects, whereas the living entity, matter and spirit, the living entity is the cause of various sufferings and enjoyments, sometimes and sometimes. Now what drives Prakriti? There's some forces that drive Prakriti, the living entity, and the desires of the living entity, and the choices based upon those desires creates karma. And karma creates circumstances. We are the architect of our own ill fortune or good fortune, based upon choices we make, because we have free will. And even if it's a good one, there's bondage. Even if it's a bad one, there's bondage. And the idea of Bhagavad Gita, or the idea of the mission of human life, is to go beyond bondage. Just a little sharing. 2 evenings ago, I was at Brandeis University. It's a very different place than Illinois Institute of Technology. It's kind of a very different place. They probably have some technology courses, but that's not what they're known for. So the topic was stress management. And I began to talk by saying, you know, the best stress management is you don't have any. That's called Vaikuntha. Vai is without. Kuntha means anxiety. So go to a place where there's no anxiety, you've done your stress management problem. Solved. In case you're not there yet, then you have to do some managing of the stress, and it has everything to do with the modes of nature influencing the choices that you make, that then the choices you make generate karma. So it's a combination of chapter 2, Bhagavad Gita, good and karma. So that's what this is. So the second half, Krishna is speaking to Arjuna, second half of the verse. Living entity is the cause of various sufferings and enjoyments in this world. You can't blame others. You can look at yourself and say, I'm the architect of my good fortune, ill fortune, based on choices I made, which are influenced by the modes of nature. We're going to be exploring this a little bit further. So that's verse number 21, and the verse I really wanted to speak about was verse 22. Very similar, but this continues from verse 21. Purusha prakriti stohi mukte prakriti jangunam karanam guda sangosya sadasad yoni janmasu. Yoni means a place of birth, like at the womb of a mother is a yoni. And the sad asad, or good fortune, ill fortune, or good or evil, sad asad yoni, janmasu. By guna sangha, by the association of the modes of material nature, you generate choices. And that choices generates the sad asad, good fortune, ill fortune, or good and evil. So here's the translation. The living entity in material nature thus follows the ways of life, because from the previous verse, association with Prakriti, follows the ways of life, Prakriti driven, conditioned driven, enjoying, bhukte, the three modes of material nature. It just says Prakriti, but it's the three modes. Prakriti means there are divisions. Material nature is this big thing, or entity, or energy, and there's modes. There's divisions of energies. So here's a nice illustration of the verse. There's the good and the evil. And the persons down there on the stage, they think the good guy and the bad guy, and they're dueling over the girl, the lady, the object, the carrot that they want to be with. And then on one side is the sun, the other side is the moon. Look at the sneer on the face of the moon that's meant to show the bad guy. And so good and bad, good and evil. And one can look at the material circumstances of life and say good and bad, or good and evil, or but what's behind that, what's behind that, what's behind that, what's behind that. Mostly we don't see what's behind that, we just see behaviors and speech. Maybe someday, some of you'll become a sannyasi, you'll have the experience that I have. People ask in different ways, ask the same question again. How do you deal with fill in the blank? It's just the modes of nature acting. And it's hurtful, or it's stressful, or it's painful, or it's evil. When I went to Brandeis, it was the day after the news of the election was out. And the students, I was told that we didn't have this discussion. They were upside down over the conclusion. Because they had an idea of what's good, and they had another idea of what's evil. And You're upset. Like, you know, probably not clinically upset, but upset. So what some people rah rah and some people boo boo. It's no good and evil. It's a matter of, in one sense, that there's no objective standard unless you go to transcendence. And if you go to transcendence, then you're looking at the modes of nature. And ignorance is at the bottom, passion is in the middle, goodness is towards the top, but there's always, according to Bhagavad Gita, where the modes of nature are there, there's always a mixture. Even in some ignorance, there's some goodness. I mean, Karna. He had a good side and he had a terrible side. Jarasandha, he was like to give charity to the Brahmanas. And, you know, Karna cut off his armor when Indra, dressed as a mendicant, came and asked him for his armor. He just got a knife and cut it off. He was attached. It was attached to his body, but he was attached to. But he was charitable. But he was also cruel. He was the one behind getting Draupadi. It was Karna. And his buddy Dushasana did the dirty work, but it was Karna's idea. And you know, it's sneering in the background was Duryodhana, but it was Karna. And so forth. So there can be a mix, is the point. It's not always this or always that, because the modes of nature are mixed. Even a person that's in the mode of goodness, there's some tinge of passion and ignorance. There's many, many, many narrations of elevated persons becoming implicated in lust or other things, you know, things that aren't good, by bad association. There's a Ramayana episode that fits in this topic. I'm going off the text of Bhagavad Gita, but I'm sure you won't mind. You know, too much philosophy, you gotta tell some stories and keep it light. When Lord Ramachandra appeared because the demigods were being harassed by Ravana, to the point where Indra was defeated by Ravana's son. That's how he got the name Indrajit. Before he had a different name, but he defeated Indra, so Indrajit became his name. And they were universal terrorists besides this earthly realm. So the demigods went to the shore of the Milk Ocean and they pleaded for help. Lord Vishnu said, yes, I'll come. I'll deal with this. And I'd like you to assist me. You can appear on earth in the form of praja that you generate, but you know, with restrictions and so forth. So the sons of the same father of Nalakuvara and Manigriva, the same sons of the father of Nakula and Sahadev. There we go. Who is the father of Nakula and Sahadev? Ashwini Kumaras. The same was the father of Dvidvida and Maida. They were in Ram's Leela, and they were confidential personalities in assisting Sugriva, and then later assisting Ram in the battle in Lanka. He had very prominent positions, intimate associates of Ramachandra and Sugriva. They're way up there. But they made a boo-boo. They made an offense. Specifically, Dvidita made 2 offenses against Lakshmana. And as a result, his elevated position became vulnerable to bad association. He became victim of bad association. The bad association for him was Narakasura, and he, because when Krishna killed Narakasura, it liberated the 16,100 princesses. He wanted to get back at Krishna. So he took the side of the demons, although he was an elevated person. You know, it's just an example from scripture. Bad association can make a good person a bad person. It can work the other way. And just on the topic of good and evil. We're the architects of our good fortune and ill fortune, based upon choices we make. A lot of it has to do with the modes of nature with which we associate. That's what's on the screen. And then there's this good and evil thing. So two things, the modes of nature and karma. Modes of nature influence choices by conditioning. We don't have to, but we're influenced by the modes of nature. So there's another similar image to the other one, but those are the three modes. You recognize the colors, yellow, red, and blue. The three primary colors you mix, you make all colors. Three modes of nature you mix, you get all variety of life, all species, all varieties of coverings, of personality types and likes and dislikes, and the whole shebang is material nature, Prakriti, is influenced by those three modes. We may be thinking we're independent. Think again. We have free will. That's something that the modes of nature don't take from us. No one can take from you. Free will is of the soul. How it's used in conditioned life depends upon the influence of the modes of nature. And sometimes the mode of goodness is more prominent, and sometimes the mode of passion is more prominent, and sometimes. And some people are really passionate, and some people are really ignorant. Some people are really good. And those three modes, those three ladies indicating the three modes, they're under the direction of the principal controllers of the modes. There we see Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, who are overseers. They're not in those modes, but they're the overseers of those modes. And then you make choices and you get karma. And some people, it's pretty hard. When people are engaged in karma, it's not just, one group of people or another group of people. It's now, as Kali Yuga becomes degraded, it's just very prevalent. Unfortunately. And people don't think it. Most people don't think anything about it. It's just life. Without going into it too much, because it's painful, and what the image is. And the principle of karma is, as you bring suffering and pain to another living entity, guess what? Comes back. And what's it may go in the behind closed doors where people don't see it, but we know what's going on. And people that eat those things, they don't see it, but they know what's going on. But they do it anyways, influenced by the modes of nature and this question of enjoying. Who's the enjoyer? What's enjoyment? What's happiness? Who am I? Basic questions. And, whoops, went the wrong way. Here's another illustration. It's similar. It's just showing. Let's see if this laser pointer works. Yeah, it works. Okay. This is down towards the lower modes of nature. You see ignorance, anger, greed, lust, pride, those are enemies of the soul, and they lead downward. And there's the enticement of wanting to be the enjoyer. And the modes drag one. A person who is influenced by those modes, they drag them. Like an addict is dragged by their addiction to something. It gets started with a habit and it becomes an addiction. Anyway, then this is the enjoyment mode, the mode of passion. And then there's this rest of the staircase that goes up. Accepting a spiritual master, study of the Vedas, sense control, spiritual knowledge, going the upward direction. Urdvam from Bhagavad Gita. Urdvam gachanti sattvasta. Urdvam, upwards. Gachanti, those who are situated in. Sattva, sta, those who are situated in the mode of goodness, they go up. Madhye tishtanti rajasa. You know, you hang out in Chicago and Delhi and other places. If you're in the mode of passion. Oh, gachanti tamasa. Down. It's the modes of nature. And then, one more time, by the influence of the modes of nature, my free will is inspired by, attracted to, influenced by modes of nature. I make choices accordingly. And somehow the slide changer isn't working. This is illustrating this something similar. You know, the lust is in the lower left, and the consequence of lust is a life form that corresponds with lust. Eating anything, everything, without discrimination. There's a life form that's more suited for that than a human life form. And elevation by making sacrifice and control of the senses and giving charity leads to elevation, and ultimately back to the place of spiritual consciousness, or the Vaikuntha consciousness. So here's the verse again. Purusha prakriti stohi unkte prakriti jan gunan karanam guna sangosya sad asad yoni janmaso. The living entity in material nature thus follows the ways of life, enjoying the three modes of nature. That's the nature, enjoyer, and consciousness, the three, matter and spirit. And when the living entity tries to be we're not meant to be the enjoyer of Prakriti. Who is Prakriti the property of? Krishna. He's meant to be the enjoyer. But we're kind of like competitor, little Krishnas, or imitation Krishnas. We want to be the enjoyer of Prakriti. So then we're placed in this situation where the modes of nature are the impetus for making our choices. We don't have to do that. And when we do that, this is due to his association with the material nature. Thus, he meets with good and evil among various species. I'll share something, a little pause. Once upon a time I was a college kid. And I never made it to graduate school because I went on to Krishna consciousness from undergraduate school. There were circumstances surrounding it. I won't go into those circumstances. But the opportunity of meeting one fine day In my junior year of undergraduate school, I was walking through the student union of the university that I was attending, and just going from one side to the other side to meet a friend. It stayed on the other side, the dormitory. And when I was walking through the ground floor of the student union, I saw a big crowd of people around the assembly hall. And I hadn't seen anything like that before. I'd seen events inside that assembly hall, Millard Fillmore room. And I was curious what's going on. So I wiggled my way through the crowd at the door. And I went inside, and there were two people on the stage. There was this spotlight, and one of the people on the stage was Allen Ginsberg. Those of you from India, you don't know who Allen Ginsberg is, but I'll tell you a little bit about him. He was both famous and infamous. Famous for poetry, and a little infamous because, at least during that time, it was fame among certain population. He was an advocate of LSD. It was very popular. People stay high forever, take LSD, and don't come back. That was the idea. It didn't work, but that was the idea. And what he did was he took LSD, and then he wrote poetry while he's on LSD, and then he'd have poetry readings where he would recite his poetry to people on that LSD, and they loved him. He was a very popular guy. So in addition to that fame, infamy, he had a liking for India, and particularly he liked mantra meditation, and particularly he liked Hare Krishna mantra. He was a big advocate of Hare Krishna mantra. So somehow, I don't know the how, he met Prabhupada, and so they were on a tour of colleges. So the two people on the stage was, I recognized Allen Ginsberg because he was a celebrity of sorts. You know, receding hairline like Albert Einstein, hair that out like this, and really thick glasses, and you know, a Jewish looking man. Allen Ginsberg. And he was playing bongo drums, which was popular at the time for hippies to have bongo drums, you know, two different sounds. And Prabhupada was on the stage. I didn't know who Prabhupada was. It's the first time I saw him. I didn't know his name. I didn't know anything. I didn't know anything. It just was going through the student union. And they were chanting. Prabhupada was leading, and the audience was responding, and it was really nice. I didn't know what it was, but it had an impact on me that changed my life. Just, you know, lava matra sadhu sangha sarva siddhi hoy. Even a short association with an elevated sadhu, it can change your life. So, in retrospect, my life, direction of my life changed. I mean, without the details. I started asking questions that I asked when I was a little kid that I stopped asking because I was too busy being successful, according to the model of what success is in modern world. And you all know what the model is, I don't have to tell you. You're following the model. You're probably very successful at following the model, that's why you're here. And then, is there something else besides that? I started asking those something else questions again, because I had been too busy being successful. I was successful by those standards, but my life didn't have a higher purpose or transcendental purpose or ultimate purpose. I didn't know Bhagavad Gita anything. The little things started to happen. So I'm just doing some autobiography thing here. One of the things that happened after that is I had a philosophy professor who I made a friendship with him outside of class and blah, 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 blah. We did things together. He took me to the pottery room and taught me how to make pots. He described not just how to make pots, but how it helped center him because when you make pots, you need a potter's wheel. You take a glob of clay, and you have to put it in the center of the wheel. Otherwise, you can't make a pot. See, he described how doing that helped him center his energy. He was a philosopher, but he lived his talk. And many other things. And he gave me a Bhagavad Gita. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know how to pronounce it. I didn't know nothing about nothing. But that came after meeting Prabhupada. Anyway, without all the whole autobiography thing, there's something about sound vibration, and one of the reasons I'm here and visiting universities, just before I was in Boston, Brandeis and Northeastern and MIT, and here we are in the next place and the next place. It's because of that connection of the gift that I received from meeting Srila Prabhupada on campus. It had a profound effect. It's a long-lasting, profound effect. So there's something about sound, and that the sound that comes from a perfect person, namely Krishna is a perfect person, he's not a fallible person. Aparusheya, beyond the fallibilities of a human. So that's Bhagavad Gita. And Bhagavad Gita, here these two verses are telling us how we get implicated in the endless cycle of birth and death, and thinking that we're searching for enjoyment and not always getting enjoyment. And even if whatever we get that we call enjoyment, it's flickering. In the next moment, it turns into something else. Or at the end of life, at the very least, it's ashes. So what's substantial? What's happiness? What's enjoyment? And who's the enjoyer? So, Bhagavad Gita is for thoughtful people. I'm really happy to be invited to speak on Bhagavad Gita. I'm happy that you're taking the time to go through with them these lessons of Bhagavad Gita, and try to take it on beyond just like it's something academic in a classroom, that it's information, more information, more information, and now you can say back lots of information. That's not the purpose of Bhagavad Gita. The purpose of Bhagavad Gita is to awaken through sound from the perfect person, Krishna, to awaken consciousness of who we are. And what our higher purpose of life is, along with living in the world and doing responsible duties of life. Karma Yoga, Dhyan Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Yoga ladder. Okay, I'm going to stop abruptly. And let's see if there's some discussion, topics you'd like to raise. Nice group. Thank you for taking out the time from your busy lives. Yeah.
Hare Krishna, you mentioned about just the influence of the modes, and since a lot of our activities are governed by that, could you elaborate a little bit on the process of how to go beyond that?
Sure. In one part, it's yoga. And what does that mean? Yoga means linking with the Supreme. Yoga means linking. Linking with what? Linking with the Supreme. So there are different stages of yoga taught in Bhagavad Gita. It starts with karma yoga. You work, rather than to get the result of your work, you work with an understanding of learn to become detached from the results of your work. And so when towards the results of your work, what do you do with the results? You offer them to Vishnu through the process of sacrifice, karma yoga. It's work because we're accustomed to it. And good people don't lazy, they do important things, it's what they can there's yoga systems that one after the next is part of the yoga ladder. And lead to the next, and lead to the next, and then lead to the next. According to Bhagavad Gita, I invite you to, those of you that don't have a Bhagavad Gita, there's Bhagavad Gitas here. For those of you who want one, come get one, it's yours. Gift. And those of you that have it, the last verse of chapter 6 is saying the topmost, the uttama form of yoga, yoga uttama, bhakti. And then the middle 6 chapters are describing what it is and how you do it. But the first is establishing the lower, the other rungs that lead, that enhance bhakti yoga, and then bhakti yoga is the top rung of the yoga ladder, and then how you do it. What does it look like? And what does it feel like? And what are the symptoms of one who's doing it properly? So, how to go beyond the modes is connecting with the Supreme, because he's beyond the modes. If we don't connect with the Supreme, we connect with something else or someone else that's within the modes. Because we're conscious beings, so there's something that we're connected to. What's your question? He's our peaceful. Yes.
Swami, you
We were.
mentioned.
I was teasing him before this. We got into this position. That's why he knows what I'm doing. I'm teasing him. Go ahead.
You mentioned about the perception of evil and goodness, and what is poison for some is great for someone else.
Yeah.
And you highlighted the students having to cope with the election results, and some were happy, some were upset. Now, we see presently in the world there's a lot of divisions in terms of the perception of evil and goodness.
Yes.
What would you say is something that could be done, or the world can do?
Oh yeah.
Individually
Yeah.
and collectively? What
Higher
we do
consciousness.
to manage this.
Awaken higher consciousness and live it. Be it and speak it. Achar and prachar. So it starts with higher. What can I do myself? I'm this little guy. What can I do to be in a place of higher consciousness? And then radiating outwards, consciousness spreads through sound and examples. Good examples, bad examples. So it's an impact. Now, for example, our founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada impacted the world in a very dramatic way by higher consciousness. And he propagated it, and because of his example, his achar, he carried that quality with him, and his prachar, and not non-stop. His words and his conduct was outstanding, and it attracted not the world. Some people didn't like it. Soviet Union, they didn't like it. But it spread like wildfire in the Soviet Union. And because he visited once for a week. And anyway, there's details. But by higher consciousness, that the good, bad, and the mixed, the influence of the modes of nature can be impacted. This is a follow-up of his question also. By propagating higher consciousness, by being in and propagating it. This, by good example. And we all have a little circle of people that we move in, our friends, and our family, and whatever else, communities, and so forth. And yet that person who is a person in higher consciousness, he can influence others. That's how it works. Yes, both of you.
Maharaj, so it's easy to be nice to you,
Thank you.
but it's not so nice. It's not so easy to be nice to some of the challenging colleagues that I work with. So,
Modes of nature, huh?
so like Arjun, he was a warrior and he was about to fight.
Yeah.
So in order to be a warrior, you have to have certain mentality, you have to have strength, the tools, etc. So my question, I guess, is, I think that you know where I'm going is,
Not sure where you're going.
so when you're in an environment that's not so conducive to a sattvic life, do you continue to try to be Brahmanical and those qualities, or do you fight like a warrior in that environment?
Depends on your nature, doesn't it? No, and also depends on it depends on your intelligence. In some cases, this is appropriate, in some cases, that's appropriate. And where do you get intelligence from? Super Soul. 15th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. He's the source. So get your Krishna connection going, and then you'll know whether to do this or to do that. And whether you do this or you do that, it's in the mode of service, because that's the consciousness of one who's in higher consciousness. The mode of service to Krishna, that Krishna should be pleased. So it's not about you're being pleased or not. I mean, worldly, that's really, we're not at the center. But spiritually, I'm not at the center. I'm the servant of one who's at the center. So if that as that consciousness is cultivated, then Krishna will supply you with intelligence, how to deal with this and how to deal with that, better than yesterday. Because yesterday I was really puzzled by co-workers that are, you got names for those kind of people. It depends. It depends on your nature, it depends on the intelligence that Krishna supplies.
So my question is, so we have the modes of nature, and then you have karma.
Volume, because there's people behind you. I can hear you.
Okay, so there's modes of nature, and there's karma that you were explaining, and
Yes, guna and
know,
karma, right?
your actions that, according to the modes, dictate karma.
Yeah.
So it's almost like a cycle.
Yes, it is.
It's a
You got it.
And so the question is, when you're reading Bhagavad Gita, sometimes it can be kind of confusing, because you're like, well, I understand that we have to transcend that, but while we're in it, it's almost like, impossible to move upward, right? So then you're like, wait, what came first? Because I'm trying to act good, but then if my karma is influencing how I'm acting, then really at the end of the day,
Can you hear what she's saying back there? Okay, good for you. How about you back there? Did you hear her question? Wow. Congratulations.
So I guess my question is, how do you get out of, there's like, you can have a victim
How do you
mentality.
stop being reactive and become proactive?
Right, and then also, how do you get out of this victim mentality that there's really nothing I can do?
Oh, boo-hoo. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it doesn't work. Property. Your question is not so dissimilar from Yashodananda's question. It's yoga. And you link with the Supreme, and then it's not like an escape hatch, or mukti, let me out of here, these people are crazy kind of liberation, but the higher consciousness kind of liberation. And you strive for it. Do you know Viktor Frankl? Anyone here know Viktor Frankl? A couple of you, 3 of you. I like Viktor Frankl. He's not a Hare Krishna guy, but he's very nice. He's very, very wise. He wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning after World War II, when he was a Jewish man in a Nazi concentration camp for several years. Circumstance completely beyond his control. I mean, you have more freedom than he had. And he endured it with the idea that he wanted to help people after he got out, after the war was over and so forth, who feel themselves trapped by circumstance there's nothing they can do about. Nothing like what he had to undergo without the detail. There's details that are just horrid. But it's the exercise of free will and having a higher purpose. You know, let's take what Prabhupada's purpose was, and if Prabhupada's purpose is something like, you know, what's Sival's question? That the world is the way that it is, and what to do about the world being the way that it is. Is there something we, little people, we can do? Just be an example, a little spark in the darkness. And you fan the spark, and the spark becomes a flame, the flame can become a fire. You're just with a purpose awaiting, his language, Viktor Frankl's language, is a purpose that's awaiting for you to be fulfilled. You're not there yet, but, you know, a purpose. He uses the word purpose. Prabhupada used the word mission. So, you know, there's a world that's dark. Not just the mode of ignorance and passion, which are very prevalent, but just the confining cyclical nature of material existence. And, you know, what happens after this life? What happens during this life? What happened before this life? And it's not in our control. So what do you do? That's the question. So the process of yoga is to link with that which is that from which this place is a reflection. The source of everything. And, you know, is there a source of everything? That's a good question. And the initial, it's a big topic, but the initial, there is, when I was a college, undergraduate student in college, I had 3 premises. 1, there's a higher reality. Something beyond this. I don't know what it is. That second is, it's good to know that you don't know. And the third is, I want to know. That's the starting point. That's faith. Shraddha. So you have, and you connect that Shraddha with Sadhu Sangha. And with Sadhu Sangha you get teachings and a teacher, and you go forward with a purpose to connect with those teachings and those teachers and go to the place of higher consciousness where that cycle isn't the way of life. Is it possible? It's certainly possible. It's not, you know, cheating. Promise you this and give you something else. It's not like that. There's a higher reality, and our human life is meant to connect with it. So, you know, do your responsible duties in life responsibly. Be a good citizen. Be a good wife and a good friend and a good, you know, etc., etc. And responsible, you know, as best you can. And simultaneously, the internal cultivation of higher consciousness through the medium of those expressions of what you do. That's, you know, back to the yoga ladder, that's karma yoga. You showed me on, you look easy. You look at your phone. You're taking notes.
No, it's,
Somebody sent a message, okay?
sorry.
Okay. Anything else? Maybe we should end. Yeah. Okay, there's a microphone.
How hard or how easy it is to find the Supreme or the consciousness or purpose for that matter?
I never been asked that question. The answer is, it depends on how attached you are to the temporary, how hard or how easy it is. When you're very attached to the temporary, it's hard. And when you're not so attached to the temporary, you have more flexibility, you have more freedom. Because the detachment to the temporary is the bondage. So it's not about I don't care consciousness. That's not it. It's just not I'm going to be attached to something. I am attached to something. What do I want to become attached to? Or, what's really important to me? And that's going to determine how easy or how long or how short or how fast or the time factor. The Prabhupada would say, less than a moment. And in that less than a moment, two things. You might go and you take chocolate. Usually we're attached, so it takes some time, depending. It's good to have good teachings and a good teacher that can help you get from where you are to where you want to go. Not just helpful, it's imperative. Anyone else? Okay. I brought with me some Mahaprasadam. You all know what Mahaprasadam is. So don't go away yet. I like giving it out. So, did I bring it with me, or is it in my suitcase?
Took it out, you took it out in your back.
No, it's in my suitcase. I can't give it out. You know where to go? Supal, you know where to go. You got the key? So we'll do one question or two more, because he's got the key. And we'll bring it back to you. Okay. Her mother brought a whole suitcase full of Mahaprasadam from the temple. And half of it's gone, so they gave you some more in Boston. So another question or two while we're waiting for the Mahaprasadam. Anyone? I can ask you guys some questions.
I think I'm loud enough, or I can try. Okay, that's okay. Maharaj, I'm still confused on how I make the right choice though, because if I'm already under the influence of the modes, then my free will is already under their influence.
That's similar to your question.
So what's the counter? There has to be a counter force, right? Like if I'm already stuck here, what's going to get me unstuck?
Oh.
And how will I choose to get unstuck? Because I'm already
Let's do that one first, then we'll do the second one second. The first one second. The second one first. Just some sharing, just fill in space. I've spent about 150 to 200 hours on a topic related to what you're asking. So I'm like loaded up to here, and this is there's a book called Madhurya Kadambini. That's a text written by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur that's explaining 2 verses from Rupa Goswami about bhakti. And the question is, how does bhakti begin? One of the starting points. And how, because just there's a long explanation, but the short explanation is, it's association with those who are carrying bhakti. And those that are carrying bhakti, they have a power of attorney from Krishna to give him, not just give bhakti, but bhakti means to give him. So he, Krishna, the source of everything, gives Kripa Shakti, the power to be merciful to those persons that are carrying bhakti. And it's enjoined in the texts, in scriptural texts, they should be merciful to those who are innocent at least. So that's how it begins. The association. Like I gave that little example for me. A college kid just walking through the student union and something happened. And then transformation, it just kept walking. There were doors that I didn't even know existed. Then I walked through the door and there's something on the other side of the door and then there's 10 other doors and walked through some of those doors. How does it start? It starts with the association of those that are carrying bhakti and they have a bhakti vessel called their heart and they spill a little on you. Oh, excuse me. Oh, that's okay. That was nice. That's how it starts. It's little, doesn't have to be an ocean, just a drop. It's very, very powerful. The mercy of bhakti when you receive it. So then you can cultivate it by sound. But sound. Just like this university, you cultivate your interest in whatever it is your field of study through taking classes. You can go read a textbook. You don't need to come to this institute, but you go to teachers, not just because that's the way it is, but that's the process of learning through sound. There's the text, and the teacher helps guide through the text, etc., etc. And they examine how you understood it, etc. According to the student, they guide this direction, that direction. This good teachers do that. So that's how it begins. So it's this inquisitive spirit. As I said, as a college kid, I want to know. And I know that I don't know, but I want to know. And want to know what? Well, I didn't know what to call it. Just something that's an alternative to stuff. The passionate accumulation of stuff and getting better at it. And that's happiness. That's success. There's something beyond that. Something deeper, something more intrinsic. So association with people that are like that can help you through sound grow it. At least like why you have this little club gathering. There's some interest, you're busy, you're successful, that's why you're here. And so along with your busy, you're spending some time doing this. Because it's important. That's like this is meant to replace that, but the teaching of bhakti is not, you have to give stuff up. It's a very important teaching. You maintain what you're doing, and you change the consciousness behind what you're doing, that the purpose is not just to get stuff, but to connect with the Supreme. And that's how you get out of that cycle, the vicious cycle, trapped by devotees. Then you start making free will choices according to a higher consciousness, or connecting with the Supreme. Sadhu Sangha. start, the sequence goes, Adao Shraddha. So how do you get that? Preliminary faith, by associating with those that have it. That awakens that faith. It's intrinsic, it's covered. It awakens by association. Then sadhusanga. What do you do? When you're with sadhus, what do? You do what sadhus do. Bhajana Kriya. Along with your other things, the things of this world. You don't drop them, you just take some time each day. It's sadhana. Patanjali teaches the same thing every day for a prolonged period of time with the confidence it's going to take me to a good place. Place of higher consciousness, not caught. And it doesn't matter how I make my choices because they're influenced by the laws of nature. I'm going to be caught whatever I do, so why even try? And frustration and there's an alternative. Sadhu Sangha can have teachers and teachings in the direction of transcendence can transform everything. Yeah, go ahead, follow up.
The initial meeting sounds like a happy accident, though, to meet a devotee.
Yeah. Well, now, how does that, so it's good fortune. Now, material fortune we create, spiritual fortune we don't. There's nothing you or I or any one of us or any living entity can do to create spiritual fortune. What creates it is the merciful nature of those that have it, giving it. And they're enjoined, according to scriptural texts, they're enjoined to be merciful. Specifically, give that which you have. You've received, don't be a miser. Give it. Be charitable with the most valuable thing. And you can be charitable with other things too, but be charitable with the most valuable thing. So it's an accident. Good fortune. This Madhurya Kandamani talk, I'm going to spend like an hour and a half on that topic. It's Yadrichchaya, which means there's no material cause. There's nothing can stop it, nothing can start it. It's spiritual. Bhakti causes spirit bhakti. Not something causes bhakti. And material is not like that. You don't get a degree at this university. The sadhana and the sadhya are different. The discipline and the practice are not the same as the outcome. You do something to get something. Bhakti isn't like that. Okay. Guess what? Here's the Mahaprasada. So I'm going to walk around. You know what to do.